Following the events of the first Wolf Warrior film, Lang Feng works as a mercenary to protect a vessel carrying aid to Africa. He stops a Somalian pirate hijacking attempt by engaging the pirates in a hand-to-hand battle underwater, to which he defeats them all without any injury. Later, he returns his killed comrade, Xiao Fei, to his hometown with the help of other members of his special operations team. Feng reminisces his memories with Fei during the burial and how much he loved his family. Meanwhile, a real estate corporation is about to demolish their home as the family grieves and prepares for the burial. The real estate firm's owner confronts Feng and his staff for their patriotism and points a gun at them, causing Feng to kick him on the ground. The boss then sends his men to assault them, but Feng and his squad quickly beat them down. Soon after, the police show up there, and the owner tells them that Feng has a gun, causing the police to point their guns at them. The police officer then tells him to put his weapon down. At the same time, the owner stands up and declares that he will make Fei's family wish they were dead, which infuriates him. When the owner is leaving, Feng calls him, unloads his gun, and kicks him toward a car, causing his death. After an unfortunate event, they remove Feng from the military and send him to prison. His superior reminds him that a soldier is respected not because of his uniform but because of his duties. 3 years later, Feng is then released from the Chinese army. Feng departs for Africa after his release from prison to travel aimlessly over the continent. As he is preparing the truck to deliver goods to the African people, 2 foreign navies approach him and commend him for saving the lives of everyone. They then ask to take a picture with him before they leave. Later, he goes out in a truck to provide for the Africans and deliver herbs and Chinese wine. Then, he comes across an old young friend named Tundu who sells him DVDs, but he confiscates them and throws them into the garbage. Later that night, Feng and a few locals are having a beach party and having fun. When he gets drunk, he remembers his fiancée, Lieutenant Colonel Long Xiao Yuan, who sent him a marriage application while serving time in prison. She tells him that she will be sent on a mission, and once she gets back, she wants him to get the marriage application signed. But then, he also remembers that Xiao Yuan was attacked while carrying her mission at the border and that he is carrying the bullet they found until today. Moments later, he grieves the loss of Xiao Yuan and feels hopeless about avenging her. The following day, the news shows the government announcing that the Red Scarf rebel army attacked Bachka village early that day as the country grapples with the Lamala outbreak. They report that they have set up quarantine across the country to contain the epidemic and declared a state of emergency. Despite the news, Feng still continues with his deliveries to the locals. When he collects the payment from one Chinese store owner, he notices that he has paid him short. However, the Chinese man tells him that in times like that is the price he gets. Then, Feng shows him the bullet and asks if he knows it, but the Chinese insist that he has never seen it before. Shortly after, he goes back to the beach and spends time with the locals when they are attacked by rebel fighters trying to overthrow the Somalian government. He immediately runs, protecting Tundu, and they end up in the Chinese store. When the rebels invade the store, he starts to fight them off and successfully defeats every rebel inside. He then locks the store and thinks of going to the Chinese embassy. Then, he instructs every civilian in the store to follow him as they escape and make their way to the embassy. The rebels followed their way, but the Chinese told them to stand down because China and Africa were friends, so the rebels retreated. Soon after the rebels and their mercenaries overcome the government troops, a Chinese flotilla arrives to evacuate Chinese people caught up in the civil war. While aboard a Chinese military ship, the store owner approaches Feng and asks about the story of the bullet. On the other hand, Tundu finds out they are going to China, so he runs off the ship, causing Feng to follow him. When Feng reaches him, he says he wants his mom and doesn't want to go to China. Later, the store owner follows them and tells him the bullet he carries belongs to European mercenaries aiding the rebels. However, the owner also tells him that whatever grudge he has against them, he doesn't advise him to chase after death. Meanwhile, he overhears the Chinese navies talking about Dr. Chen, a high-value target for the rebel army and 47 Chinese workers. But because the United Nations doesn't permit them, they cannot enter the war zone. The Navy then says that to complete the evacuation of Chen and the other workers, someone has to undertake the mission alone. Feng then says he will go. He introduces himself as a former PLA from the Southeast region, Special Ops Brigade, Wolf Warrior Squadron. He tells them that Tundu's mother is at the Hanbon Chinese factory and that he knows approximately where it is located. Then, he goes back to Tundu and promises him that he will get his mother back. He then offers to save Dr. Chen, who was being kept captive at a neighboring hospital working on a vaccine for the endemic Lamala. He will also rescue workers in a Chinese industry to find and get revenge on the owner of the bullet. On the other side, Big Daddy, a violent American working for Diane Corps, is in charge of the mercenaries. He is talking to his superiors, who are looking for Dr. Chen. He then goes to one of their hostages and instructs him to say what he had just told him earlier. The hostage then says that Dr. Chen is at St. Francis Chinese Invested Hospital. After speaking, they kill the hostages. Later, the rebels and their mercenaries arrive at the hospital, looking for Dr. Chen. One doctor then stands up, claiming she is Dr. Chen, but one African revolutionary tells her to stop and tells the rebels that she is Dr. Rachel, a good doctor who saved many lives. The rebel then shoots at the soldier and attempts to shoot Dr. Rachel when Dr. Chen stands up, trying to stab the rebel. Unfortunately, one mercenary accidentally shoots Dr. Chen. The man then grabs Dr. Rachel, attempting to shoot him when Feng arrives. He then faces the insurgents in an attempt to rescue the hostages. On the other hand, Dr. Chen, who is dying, orders Feng to take his daughter, Pasha, an African. After being chased by Big Daddy's mercenaries, Feng manages to escape with Pasha and one doctor working with Dr. Chen on the vaccine, Rachel Smith. Along the way, their car crashes, and Feng cuts his hand on some dead bodies infected with the Nameless virus. Sometime later, many Nameless-infected civilians approach them and ask for food. After that, he ignores all warnings from Rachel that he is likely to be infected with the virus. They then travel to the Chinese-owned handbound factory to save the workers and his godson's mother, who also works there. Meanwhile, Big Daddy meets with his superior, the rebels' leader. The rebel leader then tells him that killing the Chinese will cause him big trouble. Then, Big Daddy shows him Dr. Chen, who is dead, which causes the leader to get mad because he wants him alive. Later, Big Daddy's mercenaries report that their facial recognition crew uploaded a video of Leng fighting off the pirates. Then, they bomb the hospital. On the other hand, while Feng is on his way to the factory, he reports to the military that doctors were killed by armed mercenaries, causing the life of Dr. Chang and other Chinese medical staff to be sacrificed. After confirming what Feng reported, the military immediately sent it to Ambassador Fan. Then, he requests to talk to Tundu and tells him he is on his way to the factory as he speaks. However, the commander tells him that the rebel army sabotages all major roads, railways, and bridges. The commander then orders him to set his watch and that they can only wait for 18 hours, and after that, they will leave. When Feng arrives at the factory, the suspicious factory security team, led by Zhou Yifan, an arrogant youngster and ardent supporter of the Chinese army, confronts him. Nessa, Tundu's mother, then interrupts them to ask if he is Feng and asks about Tundu. Yifan allows Feng inside the factory. Feng tells him that Ambassador Fan called to say that tomorrow at 7 a.m., a United Nations helicopter will be landing at the factory to evacuate them. Later, Lin, one of the factory managers, calls the attention of all the employees. He separates the Chinese from the Africans and claims they will only take Chinese people, with the management going first. Because of that, a commotion starts, causing Feng to speak up. He says that he brought the helicopter, so he will be the one to call the shots. He then says that everyone will leave tomorrow, that children and women will go with the chopper, and the men will follow him on foot. Yifan is delighted with his news as he doesn't want any of his employees to be left behind. While jubilating about the news of their incoming rescue, the factory is attacked by mercenaries from Big Daddy to take Pasha prisoner, because they think she is Lamanla's cure. Feng mobilizes the workers to stand up for their fellow manufacturing workers and their families against Big Daddy's mercenaries. As Feng continues to fight Big Daddy's mercenaries, he is weakened by the Lamanla illness as it turns out he got infected through the cut, as Rachel foresaw. Despite that, Feng manages to hold his ground against Big Daddy and his soldiers but is nearly overpowered and killed when the rebel commander and his soldiers are surprisingly told to retreat. The rebel commander warns Big Daddy not to injure any Chinese people because, as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, he needs them on his side if he takes political power. Enraged, Big Daddy kills the rebel commander and commands everyone to return to the factory to catch Pasha and murder Feng. Meanwhile, Lin questions who Feng is because he says they were safe there before he showed up. Nessa then says he is her son's friend and came there for her. Later, Dr. Rachel also says that she trusts him because he rescued her and Pasha earlier at the hospital. Since that, he's been protecting them. However, Lin still tries to convince them that everyone around him is killed. Feng falls to the ground, and Rachel immediately goes to his aid. The factory workers learn that Feng has the lethal Lamanla virus, but Yifan tells Lin he is his friend because he just saved his life. Still, Lin says that because he has the virus, he is putting everyone's lives at stake, causing Feng to decide to leave. Rachel then says they all know what will happen to someone infected with Lamanla and that she hopes they will remember this dying man who tried to save all of them. Later that night, it is raining when they drive off and decides to spend the night in a cave. When Rachel administers a serum injection to Feng, he discovers that Dr. Chen discovered the presence of self-healing properties in humans. That is rare cases. Lamanla antibodies can be found in patients. Among the thousands of Lamanla patients he treated, he chanced upon one person, Pasha. Feng then learns that Pasha is not his daughter but his patient. Rachel tells him Dr. Chen created an experimental vaccine by analyzing Pasha's blood. Rachel continues to explain that the population has lost faith in the government to contain the outbreak. Then, he realizes that the rebels are after them because whoever takes Pasha will take the country quickly. Later, Rachel talks about Xiao Yun and tells him she is lucky to have a man who loves her so much. She then inquires why Xiao Yun didn't return, and he only shows her the bullet. Then, Big Daddy and his men return and gather the industrial workers waiting for the Chinese helicopter to arrive, with Feng watching from afar. Feng then comes back to the factory to save the workers. After he takes off, the rebels inside the factory, Pasha, and Rachel, come in with guns, which Feng to Yifan and is head of security. Rachel then prepares to fight when he tells her that her hands are for saving lives, not taking lives. Then, the three go out to kill the remaining rebels and mercenaries. After that, Feng sends a video of a rebel lowering the Chinese flag as evidence that they are killing their citizens. The commander then tells him they will gather all information and have Ambassador Fan submit it to the UN. After the workers are saved, the helicopter shows up. Pasha, Rachel, and the other women and kids take off in the aircraft, but it is shot down. Feng and his comrades are enraged in a continuing battle against armies of Dian Corps mercenaries and rebels bolstered by several tanks. After observing the significant battle fatalities, the Chinese fleet launches missiles to destroy the tanks. In the final moments of the battle, Feng confronts Big Daddy and discovers that Big Daddy is the owner of the bullet that murdered Xiao Yun. After a brutal fight, he kills Big Daddy because of his wrath. The survivors are then driven by Feng in convoy through rebel-held territory to the United Nations camp. In the scene during the middle of the credits, Feng is given permission by his commander to rejoin his military squadron and is then shown in a video that reveals Xiao Yun is still alive. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.